Are we good?
Yeah, say something.
Hello?
Oh.
All right. So first off, hello everybody.
Hello.
It's good to see such a large crowd. We are rolling. So anyway, I'm Alex. I work at Trusted Sec. I work in GRC, where we have a pretty cool practice going on there. We do a lot of security assessments, a lot of audits, et cetera. CSSP, which is, people love to talk about that, right? I'm a QSA. I know people hate QSAs, but that's whatever it is. And I'm a 27001 auditor, which is also exciting. I also like to have a lot of fun. So if you like to have fun, we can hang out and do something, whatever. So my question is, why doesn't anyone do anything? Like when we go out places, like why is it so common that the organizations or just the end users are not doing stuff? Because it's no secret what people should be doing. All these best practices sitting out there and everything else. People know what they should be doing, et cetera. Because I think what we keep seeing is if you get breached, it's probably not going to be something like really cool and exciting that we would want to talk about here. It's probably you're missing a patch or something's misconfigured or your vendor got hit or something like that. It's not the fun stuff that seems to get people lately. It's the really boring stuff. And I think one of the biggest problems is, so this is, have you seen this? This is butter flavor spray, and that's furniture polish. It's not particularly relevant, but I figure. You can probably imagine we have a lot of memes at work and pictures and stuff. So if I can use them, I try. But one of the things I think that we all forget is that this is our job, but for most of us, it's also our hobby. I mean, we're out here on a Wednesday. We're here on a Wednesday night, right? I mean, there's other stuff you could be doing. I don't know what, but stuff. And this is what we're interested in. It's probably what you read about, right? I mean, but you don't find someone like in the accounting department that's not out reading security blogs or like listening to paul.com or anything, right? They're just not interested. Security Weekly, sorry. Anyway, so, I think one of the big things is people always like to go around us. People in security are always saying no. So I always try to say yes, but let me show you how to do it securely. Because if you say no, they're going to do it anyway, right? I mean, how often does that happen? I went to a self-storage place because this person was giving me a chair for my daughter. And they're like, oh, we got to wait at the gate. I'm punching this code. We'll call you the code. I'm like, well, the exit. I just pulled up the exit and opened, and I drove right in. So I'm like, and and then they got there, and I was already there. And they're like, how'd you get in here? I'm like, well, you know what I do for a living, right? They're like, yeah. I'm like, I mean, that's not related to how I got in or anything, right? But it was funny. I think that's so important. I mean, if people keep coming to you and you say no all the time, they're not going to ask you anymore. So it's really working with people to try to find ways to do things securely. Because there's always a way to do it securely, right? Or usually. And then what I've often found is, and I don't know where else to put this in the slides, so it kind of doesn't really fit here, but it's like the stories can really help. As a vendor, I never want to sell with any fear or uncertainty and all that, because I think that's just not a good thing to do. I think that's kind of unethical. But internally, I think it's okay a little bit to sell with fear. You know what I mean? If you have a ton of breaches going on in the news and whatnot, then yeah, bring it up. If I do it, I don't think it's that cool. But internally, I think that's important. The one thing I always like to go back to, if you're from Cleveland or Akron, I think it's been probably 6 years, and I wasn't involved in it anyway, or nobody I worked with was involved in it anyway. But it was all over the news. It was at one of the hospitals. One of the nurses' ex-boyfriends went online, bought one of those screen capture things. It goes online, takes the screen capture, and sends it back. Well, of course, because they allowed access to personal emails on clinical machines, the nurse opens up the email, gets on the machine, and all of a sudden it's sending back like data, and it calls all these HIPAA. You remember this? No. So it ended up with all these HIPAA fines and issues, and I think the guy went to jail or whatever. But anyway. So I always like to bring that up because if someone's like, well, why can't we use Gmail at work? Or why can't we log on to Yahoo at work? I'm like, well, first off, it's 2015. You have a phone. Like, you don't need to use your work computer to log on to Gmail. I mean, go to Verizon, right? But it's things like that. So then it kind of light bulb goes off in their head. Because if you're just telling them no, you can't use your Gmail, it's like, well, they're not happy. But if they have a reason, they're usually cool. So if you think about why organizations don't do stuff, and this is stuff we run into all the time. One is it costs money. And that doesn't just mean you have like going out and buying stuff. Like Amanda said, like blinking boxes. I remember I was at one place, and I used to always joke about like buying a piece of equipment and having it sit on a shelf. And I actually went to this guy's office, and I look over to my left, and there's this piece of hardware, and it says application firewall. And I'm like, they actually bought an application firewall, and it was just sitting on a shelf. Like, okay, that's not protecting much, right? Does it? Well. But anyway, yeah, they don't want to spend money. And it's not just the spending money. It's whether you're sending your people to training and education, well, then they're not working because the business is there to make money. Or if they're actually buying a product, or if they're hiring more people to do it, or this or that. I mean, that's always a big driver. So if you can, look for ways to like show the value of it. One of the problems is if you spend $100 on security and you get breached, it's fairly obvious that $100 was not enough. If you spend $10 million on security and there's no breach, well, how do you explain that you could have spent $5 million, right? Or you could have spent $2 million. Like, you don't know if you're spending. It's hard to know if you're spending too much and nothing happens. I know I look much younger, but I'm 37. I've been driving for 21 years, never had an accident. But I've always had insurance. So I've always paid. Are you taking my picture?
Of course.
Oh, okay. So I always paid for insurance, but I've never used it. So like looking back, it's like, well, could I have skirted the law, right? Well, I did get one of those letters where they ask you to prove you have insurance. But I could have skirted the law, right? So it's like that. We get that a lot too. You see that a lot, where people are like, well, we haven't been breached, and we're spending all this money. Can we spend less money? The legacy applications, especially in manufacturing, you see that all the time. You have some piece of software or code that was written in the 70s that they can't update anything because that'll stop working. And from a security standpoint, a lot of times it's like, well, the sky's falling, you better get that off, and move it over here or do this. But if they do that, they can't make money. It's like the most secure computer obviously is unplugged and not being used. But you're also not making any money as a business that way. The people, time and time again, how many people work in an organization where you don't have enough resources, just time in the day, right? A lot of times they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what they should be doing. Stuff that's common sense to all of us, because this is what we do, and this is what we like, and this is, how we spend our time, is not always common sense to other people. So if you can articulate what we know is common sense to other people and explain why and sell it, that's why a lot of times people that are really successful in our business aren't necessarily the smartest, always. They're the people that are best able to articulate the need and the solution. And then the other thing you run into is, well, we're compliant. So we don't need to be, we don't need additional security. I think we all know compliance doesn't equal security. Especially when you look at a lot of the compliance standards. There's one in particular that I won't name, but it's put out by an industry, and it's not necessarily designed to stop everything from happening. It's designed to have kind of a balance between being able to engage in commerce versus also be as secure as possible. So if you're just going to that baseline and only doing compliance, then that's an issue. But anyway, so if you know why they're not doing it, it makes it much easier to figure out how to get them to do it. Because all the time, it'd be so easy to take a best practice standard. I'm gonna take like 27001 as an example. You can just throw it at somebody, and hey, send me a check. I just solved all your problems, right? But it doesn't matter if they can't use it. So why don't users do stuff? A lot of times they don't know. Like I said, the stuff that we all assume is common sense, like don't click on stuff, or if someone calls from the password authority, don't tell them your password. Like stuff like that. I mean, it happens all the time. You read it all the time in the news. Somebody was always getting tricked and do some electronic funds transfer for $10,000 because they got tricked. I think I wouldn't get tricked, but I don't know. What's that?
I'd also like to have $10,000.
I know what they're gonna take from me. Hey, drain my bank account of the $12 I have, right? So, the thing is, people just want to do their jobs. Like, as I said, this is our life for most of us. This is what we think about. This is what we do for a living. But for most people, this isn't their job. Their job is accounting or it's marketing or something else. So they're trying to do that, and they're trying to do a good job. And some people are just trying to get fired, but they're trying to do a good job and make a difference and do the right thing, et cetera. But they don't know what the right thing is. So we have to educate them on those things. The other thing is people always do the easy thing. There's the easy way and the hard way. I don't know if that's a real sign. I don't know if that's like a location somewhere. No, I know it's not. Nobody think I'm funny? Like, that's rare. But no, people are always looking for that easy way. So what we always try to do is make things easy securely. One of the common ones is like file sharing. So you'll talk to somebody and they'll say, oh, we spent $100,000 on this file sharing solution. It's super secure. Nothing can happen to it, and they're all proud of it. And then you go talk to users, and they're like, well, we just use Gmail. We send the corporate files by Gmail because the file transfer is too hard to use. It takes 30 seconds when I can just Gmail in 2 seconds. So people do the easy thing. So again, really big on, in order to change things, you have to understand why it's occurring. Because without that, you can't change it. Very commonly, it's financially driven. And again, it's just hard to sell it. I mean, it's hard to sell what doesn't happen. I mean, we go through that all the time. Additionally, making sure the right people know what the issues are. That's really challenging too, because how often do we get to talk to, at a large organization, the CEO or the CIO? And I think there are a lot of times, especially if you're at a publicly traded company, that the leadership is so far removed from what's happening in security on the ground that they just don't know. And if they did know, and they did know the risk, it would be their obligation to mitigate that risk or decrease the risk. So it's how do you get them to know? And that's a question I can't answer, because I can't go running up to usually the top floor, right, in the corner office and just barge in and start talking. I probably would, but it wouldn't end well. One thing that we like to see is people getting together, so some kind of committee. Never call it a committee because people hate being on committees, right? But getting people together from all different aspects of the business. So if you can get people from tech, talking to people that are in operations and working together so they understand the risk, et cetera, that can oftentimes make a big difference. As far as users, that's the tough one. And it's almost harder, when people want to do the right thing or they've been there a long time. If you have a real family environment at a company, it's obviously much easier to get people to do what you want them to do because they're trying to be nice. They're trying to do the right thing. You call and ask for help, they want to help you. They don't know what you're doing. But in pushing the education of people, you completely find that if you are teaching people things that they're able to use in their home life as well as their work, they're a lot more open to it. So if you can teach them how to protect their personal banking information as well as protect your corporate resources, it's generally very, very helpful. Additionally, it's providing the right resources and tools. Back to that file sharing example, if you make it difficult, people will just go around it every time. And that is all I have, which is short and sweet, but that is, so I'll tell you the story. So I didn't go to my own birthday party. I know. And
it was fun though.
I'm glad you had fun, but I didn't go. But anyway, so I'm talking in the office and about things to talk about, and what I wanted to do was compensating controls for PCI DSS. Who's glad I didn't do that? Right? So, everyone says that's going to put everyone to sleep, and no one's going to want to hear it, so I didn't do it. And I will at some point if there's enough demand. I hear it. But it's just, time and time again, it's just all these big issues and all the things that we talk about when it's the little stuff that's not getting done. It's the little things that we're not seeing. And it's how can we solve these small problems? I always joke, I can go out to a startup with 3 employees, or I can get on a plane and fly 3,000 miles, and before I walk in somewhere, I can tell you what their top 6 out of 10 issues are going to be. Maybe not in the right order, but they're all going to have these issues. These aren't unique issues. Everyone has the same issues, and it's just time and time again, just keep coming up and coming up and coming up, and everybody wants a solution. But in my opinion, a lot of the things that are causing us problems are some of the easiest things to fix, technically, but not organizationally, because they're really difficult.
People problems are way more difficult than technical problems.
Right, because you're giving people access to your stuff. They're going to do something, So. Anyhow, does anyone have any questions, or does anyone want to share an awesome experience or a good story that we can all share?
I've got one.
I'd love it.
I was in a situation where I had a production machine. It was a mini computer. Management refused to buy a UPS for it. So every time down in Texas we had a thunderstorm, we'd have crashes and things. And a friend of mine said, you can broach any subject to any level of management if you call it update for whatever, and then put your subject there. And I just started writing an update memo to my supervisor and the management above him. Every time we had a power event, I said, this is what happened, this is what could have happened. And I just kept a running log of this, and before that log got a page and a half long, I had my UPS. Because I was giving my manager's manager no wiggle room at all. If that mini computer crashed and I had to rebuild it from scratch, which would have taken days, it was going to be his tale.
See, that's awesome. I mean, because that's how it should work too, right? I mean, it's just it's getting people to do stuff. You know, no one's glad that a lot of stuff's been in the news lately, but a lot of stuff's been in the news lately, and that's one thing. So if I go talk to like boards of directors, it's finally becoming more and more of a subject. You know, last time I did it, you know, I flew down. It's kind of funny to like do like 5 hours of travel each way for a 5-minute presentation, but that's what I did. I ended up staying overnight, but I flew down to Florida to present to this board of directors, and you know, I had maybe 5 or 6 minutes to talk about the information security, but afterwards they all wanted to talk to me, and that is starting to happen more and more and more. You know, everyone's really interested, not necessarily you know, in direct questions about their own organization, but definitely direct questions about what's going on just in the world and how it's becoming more and more visible. So, you know, it's a good opportunity, I think, to sell and to kind of get people talking about it and interested. Do you agree, Doug? What?
I've never flown to Florida to present to the board.
So I like to tell stories a lot. And like, so let me give you a piece of advice. If you ever go anywhere interesting, always have pizza, right? Because this is what I like to do. So if we're talking about, because people always talk about pizza. And I'm like, oh man, the best pizza I ever had was in Nice, France. Right? So like if you have pizza everywhere, you can always drop that. It's the greatest thing ever. It makes you like a complete jerk, but like, this is my pizza trick.
Are you still recording? Are you having a party?
I am. If you want to stop recording, I'll talk about my party.